Silence isn't weakness, it's reconnaissance. And while most people are busy proving themselves, the most dangerous person in the room is quietly learning how everyone else can be defeated. Let me tell you about the most dangerous man in any room. He's not the loudest. He's not the most aggressive. He's not the one making threats or demanding respect. He's the one sitting quietly in the corner, watching everything, saying nothing, revealing nothing. While everyone else fights for attention, he's collecting information. While everyone else reacts emotionally, he's calculating strategically. While everyone else shows their hand, he's studying theirs. This man doesn't have enemies. He has subjects he studies, problems he solves, and opponents he outlasts, without ever raising his voice. His name was Niccolo Machiavelli, and 500 years ago, he developed the most complete system of silent warfare ever written down. Not the kind with weapons, the kind that happens in every office, every family, every relationship, every room you've ever walked into. Today, I'm going to give you that complete system, every principle, every strategy, every move. But I need you to understand something first, before we begin. This video will change how you handle every conflict for the rest of your life, not because it gives you new weapons, but because it shows you that the most powerful weapon you already possess is the one you've been throwing away. Every single day, your silence. Before we get into the strategies, you need to understand who Machiavelli was. Not the caricature, the real man. He wasn't a villain. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't the monster history made him out to be. He was an observer. For 14 years, he served as a senior diplomat in the Florentine Republic. He sat across tables from kings, popes, warriors, the most powerful and dangerous people of his era. And he watched them. How they spoke, how they moved, how they handled pressure, how they treated enemies, how they survived betrayal. Then, while he was stripped of power, thrown into exile, left with nothing, he wrote it all down. Not as theory, as lived observation. And what he observed, more than anything else, was that the most powerful men he ever encountered were almost always the quietest ones in the room. This is their playbook. Principle 1. Silence is intelligence gathering. Most people think silence is passive, a lack of response, a failure to act, weakness disguised as calm. Machiavelli saw it as the complete opposite. He wrote, "The prince who speaks less learns more. The prince who learns more wins more." Here's what happens when you stay silent while your enemy speaks. They reveal their strategy. People who are talking are not thinking. And people who aren't thinking are showing you everything. Their fears, their next move, their allies, their pressure points, their insecurities. Every word your enemy speaks is intelligence you can use, but only if you're quiet enough to collect it. They fill the silence with mistakes. Silence creates psychological pressure most people cannot tolerate. When you don't respond, they keep talking. When they keep talking, they over-explain. When they over-explain, they contradict themselves. When they contradict themselves, they've handed you the weapon you need to destroy their credibility. Without you saying a single word, they expose their allies. Watch who defends them when they attack you. Watch who stays neutral. Watch who subtly distances themselves. Silence reveals the entire political landscape around your enemy, in ways that direct confrontation never could. Machiavelli's first principle: before you make a single move, let your enemy talk themselves into their own defeat. Principle 2. Never respond. In the moment, this is the principle that separates the powerful from everyone else, and it's the hardest one to master, because everything in you, every instinct, every emotion, every nerve screams to respond immediately when you're attacked. Machiavelli called this instinct the gift your enemy prays you'll follow. Here's why. When you respond in the moment, you respond emotionally. When you respond emotionally, you reveal your wounds. When you reveal your wounds, your enemy now has a map of exactly where to strike next. Every time, without fail. But when you wait, everything changes. The emotion passes. What felt catastrophic at noon feels manageable by evening. What demanded an immediate response often requires no response at all. Your response becomes strategic. Instead of reacting to what they did, you respond to what serves you. Those are completely different moves, with completely different outcomes. You gain the psychological advantage. Your enemy expected a reaction. They prepared for a reaction. They needed a reaction to know where they stand. When none comes, they're left in uncertainty. And uncertainty is one of the most psychologically destabilizing states a human can experience. Machiavelli's rule: never make a permanent decision in a temporary emotional state. Read that again. Never make a permanent decision in a temporary emotional state. Principle 3. Let your reputation fight for you. Machiavelli understood something that took most leaders decades to learn, if they learned it at all. Your reputation is your most powerful weapon. Not your words, not your threats, not your displays of force, your reputation. Because reputation works while you sleep. It fights battles you don't even know are happening. It protects you from enemies who haven't revealed themselves yet. He wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. But above all, it is better to be respected than either." Here's how silence builds an undefeatable reputation. Silence signals confidence. People who don't need to explain themselves seem to have nothing to prove. People who seem to have nothing to prove seem to already have everything. Confidence without words is the rarest and most powerful social signal that exists. Silence signals danger. The person who responds to everything is predictable. The person who responds to nothing is unknowable. And the unknowable is always treated with more caution. Your silence makes your enemy unable to predict your next move. And an enemy who can't predict you is an enemy who can't prepare for you. Silence lets actions speak. While your enemy is using words, you're using results. While they're making arguments, you're making moves. While they're defending their position, you're building a better one. Machiavelli's observation: the leader whose actions consistently exceed his words eventually needs no words at all. Build a reputation so solid that when enemies attack you, the people around them do your defending for you. That's not luck. That's the result of years of deliberate, silent action. Principle 4. The Art of Strategic Withdrawal. This is the principle most people misunderstand as weakness. It is the opposite. Machiavelli studied the great military commanders of ancient Rome obsessively, and he noticed something counterintuitive in every great campaign. The best generals knew when to advance, but the greatest generals knew when to withdraw. Not retreat, not surrender. Strategic withdrawal. The difference: retreat is driven by fear. Strategic withdrawal is driven by calculation. One is emotional. One is tactical. Here's how it applies to your conflicts. When you withdraw attention, you withdraw power from your enemy. Most conflicts survive on the energy of both parties. When you remove your energy completely, the conflict has nothing to feed on. It doesn't escalate. It doesn't intensify. It starves. When you withdraw presence, you create psychological absence your enemy wasn't prepared for. They expected continued engagement. They planned for your continued engagement. Your removal from the battlefield destroys their entire strategy, because their strategy required your participation. When you withdraw emotionally, you become impossible to manipulate. Every manipulation technique requires an emotional response. Guilt requires you to feel guilty. Fear requires you to feel afraid. Anger requires you to feel provoked. When you withdraw emotionally, completely and genuinely, every manipulation attempt lands on nothing, like throwing punches at smoke. Machiavelli called this the fortress of indifference, and he said it was more impenetrable than any physical fortification ever built. You cannot conquer a man who genuinely needs nothing from you. Principle 5. Outlast instead of outfight. Every single conflict Machiavelli studied had one consistent truth. The winner was rarely the most aggressive party, or the strongest, or the most intelligent. The winner was, almost always, the one who lasted longest. Time is the father of truth, and patience, the mother of all strategy. Here's the psychology behind outlasting. Your enemy burns energy. You conserve it. Every attack requires energy. Every aggressive move costs resources. Every escalation drains something, from the person escalating. While your enemy fights, they're depleting. While you wait, you're accumulating. The longer the conflict continues, the stronger you get relative to them. Your enemy makes mistakes. You document them. Impatience creates errors. Aggression creates overextension. Desperation creates poor judgment. Your enemy, frustrated by your lack of response, will eventually make a mistake that costs them everything. Machiavelli observed this in every major political conflict of his era. The patient prince always inherited the kingdom of the impatient one. Your enemy reveals their allies. You identify them. Extended conflicts reveal who truly stands with your enemy, and equally important, who is standing with them out of fear rather than loyalty. Fear-based alliances collapse under pressure. Identify them. Wait for the pressure. Watch them collapse. Never interrupt your enemy when he is making a mistake. Your silence isn't weakness. It's your enemy digging their own grave, while you hand them the shovel. Principle 6. Move in silence. Strike with precision. Everything we've discussed until now has been about waiting, observing, conserving, studying. Now, we talk about moving, because Machiavelli's silence was never permanent. It was preparation. And when the moment came, when the position was right, when the intelligence was complete, when the enemy was overextended, when the allies were in place, he moved, not loudly, not dramatically, not with announcement or warning, precisely. Like a surgeon, not a soldier. Here's what moving in silence looks like in modern conflicts. You don't announce your next move. You execute it. The announcement comes after, when it's already done, when it can't be stopped. Most people telegraph their intentions long before they act, giving enemies time to prepare, time to counter, time to prevent. The silent operator acts first, speaks after, or never. You don't seek validation before moving. The need for approval before taking action is the surest way to have your actions stopped. By well-meaning friends, by cautious advisors, by enemies disguised as both. Decide in private, execute in silence, present results to the world. You don't celebrate prematurely. The moment you celebrate, you signal completion. Completion signals vulnerability. Vulnerability invites attack. Stay quiet until the position is so solidified that no attack can dislodge you. You strike at the foundation, not the surface. Most people fight symptoms. Machiavelli targeted causes. Not the person attacking him, but the source of their power. Not the rumor spreading, but the person spreading it. Not the problem in front of him, but the system creating problems. The wise prince does not fight battles. He renders them unnecessary. When you eliminate the source, the symptoms disappear, without a single public confrontation. Principle 7. The final move, absolute indifference. I've saved this one for last, because this one is the hardest to achieve, the hardest to maintain, and by far the most powerful. Machiavelli called it the ultimate position of power, and it is simply this: genuine indifference to your enemy's existence. Not performed indifference, not pretended indifference, not the kind you post about while secretly checking their profile. Genuine, complete, total indifference. Here's why it's the final move. It removes every weapon they have. Every weapon your enemy possesses requires your emotional participation. They can only hurt you if you care what they do. They can only provoke you if their opinion matters to you. They can only manipulate you if you need something from them. Genuine indifference removes all three conditions, simultaneously, permanently. It signals complete victory. When you reach genuine indifference, you've won. Not because they've been defeated, but because they've become irrelevant. And irrelevance is worse than defeat to someone who feeds on opposition. It's psychologically devastating to the enemy. The enemy who attacks and receives anger feels powerful. The enemy who attacks and receives sadness feels powerful. The enemy who attacks and receives absolutely nothing feels nothing, because there's nothing to feel powerful about. You've become a wall they're throwing themselves against, and eventually, exhausted, confused, deflated, they stop. Machiavelli's final observation about enemies, the prince who reaches genuine indifference to opposition, has achieved something more powerful than victory. He has achieved invulnerability. When you need nothing from your enemy, when their opinion doesn't move you, when their attacks don't reach you, when their existence doesn't occupy your thoughts, you have won a war they didn't even know was already over. Let me give you Machiavelli's complete system one final time. Principle 1. Silence is intelligence gathering. Let your enemy talk. Collect every word. They're building your strategy for you. Principle 2. Never respond in the moment. Wait until emotion is gone. Respond when only strategy remains. Then respond, or don't. Principle 3. Let your reputation fight for you. Build it in silence, through consistent action, until it precedes you into every room. Principle 4. Master strategic withdrawal. Remove your energy from the conflict. Remove your presence. Remove your emotion. Watch the conflict starve without your participation. Principle 5. Outlast instead of outfight. Patience is your greatest weapon. Time is always on the side of the disciplined. Let them burn out while you build up. Principle 6. Move in silence. Strike with precision. No announcements. No warnings. No celebration until the position is secured. Act first. Speak after. Or never. Principle 7. Achieve genuine indifference. Remove every weapon they have by removing your emotional participation. Become invulnerable. Not by becoming stronger, but by needing less. Here's the final truth Machiavelli left us. The man who masters silence masters conflict. The man who masters conflict masters relationships. The man who masters relationships masters power. And the man who masters power never needs to fight again. Because by then, nobody wants to be his enemy. If this changed how you think, subscribe. Because the next video goes even deeper into the psychology of power that Machiavelli left behind. And trust me, you're not ready for what comes next.